Hi, Year 4. It's Monday and it's the first English lesson this week, and it's again about reading and reading comprehension. We are going to be reading about Kamala Harris today, and I wonder how you got on with your Joe Biden comprehension. I know a few of you noticed that I made a mistake in my answering questions, so it's always worth reading through and making sure that you've got the right answer. Be really careful. So today we're thinking about reading with good understanding and fluency, and building our vocabulary and grammar from what we read. And that's really one aspect of reading that is so important, because it helps us in the future when we come across new words. If we've read about them in before, they're no longer unfamiliar, and it will help us. So we remember our reading cafe from the last session. This is all about comprehension, accuracy, fluency, and expanding our vocabulary. Those four really important aspects to reading. And that is what we're focusing on today. The comprehension, the understanding. The other thing we're going to do today is to link it to learning that we've previously had. So it's the way reading can build on our general knowledge and actually make us more knowledgeable about other things in life. If you remember, we talked about reading broken down into the words, making sense of what's written, the comprehension, showing that you understand what you're reading. And actually today I want us to look at this one also, talking about the story, or in this case information, and cementing understanding and making links to prior learning, what we call activating prior knowledge. And that's a really important aspect of reading comprehension. Today we are going to be reading about Kamala Harris. This links to your Joe Biden reading last week. This is a picture of I think the 20th of January, when Kamala became vice president. That's like the deputy. Mr. Coughlin is the head teacher and I'm the deputy, and Kamala's a bit like that. She's the second in command. So if anything happens to President Biden, or if there are any problems, he can rely on her to help him out. So what we're going to do today is read through a small piece of text, not as long as last time, think about what we've read and answer the questions, and focus on the links that we can make about Kamala and previous learning that we've done. We're going to start today with thinking about something we did in October during Black History Month. We learned about significant people who've had a big impact on America and the UK. And we learned about this little girl. Do you remember her name? Yes, Ruby Bridges. Can you just pause the video, look at the pictures and see if you can remember what we learned about her? Well, hopefully you remember that America was a very different place 60 years ago. And actually, poor old Ruby wanted to learn just like you at school. But she lived in an area where things were not nice for Black children. And it meant that she could not go to school. And her parents realised that she was a very clever little girl and that she needed to go to school and she needed a good education. And that's just like every parent wants the best for their child. But at the time, there was what's called segregation. Black children didn't go to schools with white children. And if they did, they were separated in classes or in entrances even. And this was not right. And at the time, the president decided that it was unconstitutional. It was against the rules of the country. And this little girl, Ruby, decided, well, her parents decided that they were going to make sure that she went to a good school. And so what happened was they had the equivalent of police officers bringing her to school every day. Now, Ruby was only 6. And if you remember, this was a big deal for her, because when she went to school, there were people shouting and screaming and being not very nice to her. And then this famous painting was made to show what it was like for this little girl, beautifully dressed, ready to learn with her books and pens, and things being thrown at her. There's some tomatoes there. And then these 4 men walking with her into school, taking her to school every day. Eventually, things changed for Ruby, and eventually the other children started to realise that actually that it was wrong to segregate, and they started to make friends with her, and she learnt. And she had an amazing teacher who was the only teacher at the time who was prepared to teach Ruby. This is a picture of Ruby at 66 years old. And I'm trying to activate your memory about that because this is important. Ruby is a woman of colour, and she's had all this history, and she's 66 years old. Kamala Harris is now the Vice President of America, and she's 56 years old. So there is only 10 years between them. That's not very much. So in terms of what's happened in America and some of the changes, I wonder what they would think of each other. I am sure that Kamala would look up to Ruby as somebody who is inspirational. But also, if you think, from a time when Ruby couldn't go to school with white children to Kamala, who is a woman of colour, who is able to be Vice President of the United States, that's a pretty big jump. So I wanted us to activate our knowledge about what has happened in the past in America so that we can learn about now and the future and build on that knowledge. So we're going to read now a small piece of text about Kamala Harris. Let's read it together and look to see if there's any vocabulary that might be new. So as we read, you can either pause the video and read each paragraph yourself or wait and read along with me. Kamala Harris was born on the 20th of October 20th, 1964. Kamala's parents immigrated to the United States from India and Jamaica. Kamala is one of 2 children. Her parents were determined to provide the best education for their children. So this is an American text, so there might be some words that are slightly different for us. We would say they were immigrants, not immigrated. So if we were writing this text in England, we would write Kamala's parents were immigrants from India and Jamaica. But this word means they came from another country and came to live here in the United States. And they came from India and Jamaica. So Kamala had how many brothers and sisters? Yes, she had 1 brother or sister, I don't know what. Because she's one of 2 children, and her parents were determined that she would get the best education. So let's read the next bit. After graduating from high school, Kamala attended Howard University, and she majored in political science and economics. Now, majored means that's her main subject. Okay, in England we would say she did a degree in. So in America, they say she majored in political science and economics. Her career led her to the University of California, Hastings College of Law in San Francisco. Eventually, she gained a position at the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. That's a lot of language there. So she basically did a law degree and then became a lawyer, and became a lawyer for the county. So she became a lawyer for her local authority. In England, we have local authorities rather than county district attorneys. So she was a lawyer for like West Sussex. It's like she was a special lawyer for the county. In 2003, she ran for district attorney and won. In this case, that's like a political, it's a bit like being a county councillor. She did well as a district attorney, but as a change maker, she wanted to do more. So that's like saying she was a local politician, but she wanted to do more. She was elected Attorney General, so that's a very important position. She gained much praise for her progressive and forward approaches in this position. That means that she was praised, people were pleased with the way she looked forward to the future and wanted to change things really well. Eventually, she would be elected as a US senator in California. Do you remember we learnt about senators last time? Senators mean they are kind of politicians for the area that they live in, a bit like our members of parliament. So from being a local representative of her local area, she then became much more senior. She got a better job, and then eventually she became like an MP for California. And California is an area of America on the west coast of America. Okay, so we've learned some things about Kamala. We've learned that she went to university, two sorts of universities. Her parents came from Jamaica in India, and that she's got a brother or sister. We don't know much more. Let's have a look at some questions. So let's read. Where did Kamala Harris first go to college? Did she go to the University of California, Howard University, or San Francisco? Let's go back and check. Remember, this is a literal question, so we're literally just looking for the information. So after graduating from high school, Kamala attended Howard University. So that's where she went first. After that, she went to the University of California, okay, and then the Hastings College. So we can say that the first question, first go to college, was Howard University. In 2003, what position was Kamala elected? So this is a retrieval question. We are literally taking it from the text we've read. So in 2003, that's the clue. We're looking at that bit. Kamala ran for district attorney and won. So the answer there is she became district attorney. Now, it says here, in your opinion, what do you think Kamala's greatest accomplishment has thus far been in her career? Now, what does that mean? That's a lot of words. Greatest accomplishment. Accomplishment is a word that means a little bit like achieving. What do you think, that's your opinion, not mine, but yours, has been her greatest achievement? And it says in her career. Now, we know that she's a vice president. We could write that, except have we just read that she is vice president? No. So we could add that because that's other information we know about Kamala. But in terms of reading comprehension, we want to think about what is written in the text. In the text, it says that she is elected as senator. So I think if I was rewriting this, I would use the information and I would write here, Kamala has achieved being a senator. She has been a district attorney. Oh, let's just. And in 2021 became vice president. So with that answer, I've tried to explain what I've read and also what I also know. So from the text, I would say that that's her best achievement, don't you? But I've written what I also know, just because that shows that I know a bit more. Now, there's a question here. Where was Kamala born and in what year? Do we know where she was born? So she was born in 1964. It doesn't actually say where she was born, but I think we can guess that her parents immigrated so that she was born in America. So I'm going to say America in 1964. Now, this is a question that gets you to just think what you want to say and your views, your opinions. So I'm just going to move that one and I'm going to look at this one. It says in the passage, her parents were determined that she had the best education. My question is here, why do you think this was? What do you think? What would you say? Why would her parents want her to have the best education? I think that could be because they had come from another country and they wanted her to get the best that America could offer. They might want her to do the best because they were immigrants from India and Jamaica. And also, relating it to Ruby, you might say they would want the best for her to achieve as a young girl and adult of colour. That's really important probably to them, wanting the best. And then my final question here is about what you know already. It says, what do you think Ruby Bridges would say about a mixed heritage, African American Latino, vice president 60 years on from her experience? If we go right back and we can remember what it was like for Ruby, Ruby had to fight for her education really from being as young as 6 years old. She had to fight for the right to go to school in a mixed good quality school when there was no mixed education. And the reason Ruby's parents wanted her to go to this school was that it was better and it was closer in her neighbourhood. Okay, so where they lived. And that's their right. You all come to Swiss Gardens and most of you live quite close to Swiss Gardens. Imagine being told you can't go to Swiss Gardens because it's not for your type of child. That would feel very wrong. And we talked a lot about that in October. So there's Ruby. She's 66. And yet only 10 years after she was born, okay, was Kamala Harris was born. So I wonder what Ruby would say. I wonder whether Ruby would think it was a great thing that somebody like her, just 10 years younger, could become vice president. Because I suspect if we'd asked Ruby what she thought when she was 6, whether there would ever be a black or woman of colour in the White House as a vice president, a girl, she would say it's not possible. So it might be interesting for you to think about that when you're reading about Kamala. Now, let's just go. We've answered some questions and we've got this difference between the literal retrieval, the finding information and putting it in your own words, and giving your opinion. Why do you think? What do you think? Those are very different. That is what you've read and your opinion, but based on fact. Okay? What you're going to do on Google Classroom, there are some things to do. On there are PowerPoint presentations on Kamala, more information, a lot more detail about her. And also there's one on Ruby Bridges. So if you want to, you can read both of those to get a feeling of both characters. And that is really good learning for your general knowledge. But then you've got a challenge because the reading text, they're all on one document. You've got to choose whether you want a 1-star, a 2-star or a 3-star challenge. There's more text in the 3-star than the 2-star, and there's more text in the 2-star than the 1-star, and there are fewer questions in the 1-star challenge. So just scroll through and you'll see they look like that, all about Kamala. That is different reading to what we've just done. And then there are some questions, and I really want you to think about answering the beyond the obvious. What I say, beyond the just retrieval, literal, just pulling out the answer. I want you to think about your opinions and what you think about what you've read. There are 2 extension tasks which you can do. There is another reading activity that you can do about another amazing black senator and civil rights leader called Shirley Chisholm. And you might find it interesting to read about her. She was really a prominent civil rights leader in the 1970s, and she did some amazing things. Or if you don't want to do any more reading, you could do a writing task, which is to make your own election poster. If you could be Vice President of the United States, what would you change? What would you do? And you can draw your own if you'd like to do that. But the main learning today is all about reading about Kamala Harris and answering the questions. Have a great time reading. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. This is good for your general knowledge because it's about the world around you. And linking what you've read before is really helpful for your general knowledge and will help you in the future. Next time, after the holiday, we're going to read about Marcus Rashford. So that'll be fun. You'll all know who he is, I'm sure. Anyway, enjoy your Kamala Harris writing. Have a great day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.